Welcome to the 21st episode of Beyond the Clover podcast. I appreciate everyone who's stuck with me this far. I've done a little updates. Bart Scrow was able to get me a new background, so I got a Clover. And you can, as I mess this up with my name and the Clover, we got some designs behind it. When sent to me, when I downloaded this deal, I had to flip it in the mirror, so it's mirrored backwards from everything that I do so it's the opposite when I do my movements. And I forgot about that. So leave it to me to mess this intro up as usual. If I ever did a normal one, just assume everything's gone wrong. I took a week off. We had some virtual camp planning stuff to do, and then we've knocked out 20 episodes, so I needed a break, and I was looking for new guests, and that's where Miss Echo Essik comes in, who was
Hello.
uh, you were regional rep, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
And
the
then
North.
state secretary.
Oh, you were state secretary. I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that.
Yep.
I knew you did something, but I didn't realize it was state secretary.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was that like? That whole experience? I know we're kind of jumping through a bunch of other stuff, but I'm curious now because I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I mean, through my 4-H years, being on state was just like a dream and goal of mine. After I went to probably my first conference or congress, when I saw those people in the green jackets, it's like, I want to be there. And I worked really hard for regional rep. I had to work like a few different years, just advance my application, my interview process. I didn't get it my first time. So I worked really hard on that. And just because I failed one year didn't stop me. I wanted to reach that goal. So I finally became a regional rep as a freshman in college. So I was one of the older reps, if not the oldest rep at that time. And it was awesome and I loved it. So after you're on state council at least 1 year as a rep, then you can go on and kind of try for the like upper class offices from president to secretary, but even to the lower four that we have. And yeah, I ran for state secretary and I got it. And it was just like my biggest dream and goal to kind of be able to sit up at that level of office in an organization that I love so dearly. It was awesome being able to wear that green jacket, being able to travel, being able to kind of keep the meetings organized, running those types of things. And I just absolutely loved it. I didn't actually, and probably why you forgot, like, why I wasn't state secretary, I never really officially retired, like at Congress when you hang up your green jacket or when you like jump in the fountain, because I was gone that last Congress. So I was a sophomore in college when I was doing secretary. So I was definitely one of the oldest. I was the oldest in my state team. Like they called me grandma. So then since I was a sophomore, I was getting into a lot of more college things and activities I was doing with my major to where I missed my last Congress to retire, which was really sad, but I believe that's where God had me in that moment. So I never really officially retired. I would love to go back someday and finally hang up my green jacket, but yeah.
Or you could just draw this out and be like, I never retired. This is still
Yeah.
my. You just
I
keep going
totally
back to those meetings and be like, no, that's my spot. I didn't retire. You
yeah.
don't understand. You can't vote. You haven't voted me out.
Yep.
Just
Exactly.
hold on. They called you grandma. That's
Well,
that's kind of funny.
who was it? Someone before me who was the oldest was grandpa. Like the year before me, he was the oldest and he was grandpa. So it kind of just carried on. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. And see, it's funny knowing you through for like 4-H camps and Energizing and different events like that. And same way with a lot of these other kids is, I think when you guys go like through interviews and stuff like that, I feel like you guys all got them, on the first try. But talking to so many of you, you guys, didn't get it on that first try and
Mm-hmm.
had to come back, and you were showing that resiliency and that want and keep pushing forward and getting better. Because a lot of times when I see it and think about it, I see more of a polished result from when you did achieve it. And I was like, oh yeah, they got it first try. And it's funny how,
Mm-hmm.
your memory is just like, you don't think about, oh, they might have not got it the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. I just remember always working so hard and just like waiting for my name to be called, but it doesn't always happen. And that's what, I mean, 4-H pushed me to be just that better person, to have that motivation to push towards my goals and my wants. And that was a huge accomplishment that I was very proud of, really.
Oh, most definitely. Okay, so
Hmm.
I'd kind of jump in at the end of your 4-H
Hmm.
career. Let's
Yeah.
go back to the beginning. When did you start? Did you start as a Clover kid? Did you start middle school? Where did you start?
So I know I started in 2009, I believe. I was never a Clover kid. So I would have been math, um, like 11, I
Okay.
believe. I didn't start as a Clover kid. I didn't really even know about 4-H. The reason that we started was we had cattle at our small farm, and we kind of had a few more. We kind of was getting more cattle on our farm. We're like, hey, we have cows. Let's do beef and 4-H. It was very much just a let's put Echo and her brother in an organization that they can do something in, because I went to a very, very small school. Like I graduated 12 people. It was very small.
Well, hang on. Where did you go to school at?
Tina Avalon. It's right in the middle of Carrollton and Chillicothe.
Oh, I know where Tyna's at. I was thinking because I went to college. I did 2 years of college at NCMC, so I'm pretty familiar with like Hale and
Hmm.
and Tyna. I didn't
Yeah,
real. I was always thinking you were a Chillicothe kid for some reason.
I was a Livingston kid, which is pretty much Chillicothe, but we were just on the line that we're Livingston Club.
See, but I still have you beat because in Union Star I graduated with 9 kids.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you do. Dang. Yeah, so, I mean, that's kind of where that started, was like, small school, let's do something. So we started with cattle, showing cattle. We didn't know what we were doing. We never got really into like the fancy show cattle. Um, but I fell in love. I love my cows. Even today, at 22 years old, I still go home to go see my cows. Like, I love them. They're my pets. So that was a blessing, and that was awesome to just watch that passion grow in my heart. But from there, I found all these other projects. So I started as kind of like this weird age where the kids were like, I've been in 4-H since Clover Kid. And I'm like, I just started and I'm doing cows. So that's kind of how that started.
Wow, I was see, and I was gonna ask if you were a farm kid because I didn't remember that about you. I
Hmm.
feel like what other projects? Okay, and this is one of the questions I usually ask. So I'll go ahead and ask it. What are your favorite projects that you did while you're in 4-H?
Well, I really loved arts and crafts. I like being creative, and especially after when I did it, I arts and crafts. I think I started it my second year of 4-H and then went all the way through. So I was in it for so many years to where I was just at a point where I could just be creative. I didn't really have a lot of boundaries. I had to, okay, it has to be like this. I was in it for so many years, I could kind of just do what I wanted. So that was a lot of fun. I loved that. I still do a lot of um, crafting and all of that. I did love beef just because I'm such an animal person. If I didn't, if God didn't send me to work with people, I would be working with animals, like National Geographic or something. I love working with animals. So the beef project was a lot of fun, just putting that hard work into a calf and watching her grow and becoming an animal that trusts you and you can trust her. So that was really cool. Um, yeah, so I'd have to say arts and crafts and beef for sure.
Okay, so the people that know you and know you better than me, what is one project that you tried and maybe only did it 1 year, or tried and didn't really like it, or maybe you're doing it, well, you finished your 4-H career with it, you were doing it, but it was you weren't maybe the best at it. One of those, like, you still did
Hmm.
it just because you enjoyed the passion of it, but not very good at it. What would be something like one of those that you
Yeah,
did?
I mean, we were not good at beef. Like we didn't, fluff up our cattle. We didn't do all those fancy things. So we never got big ribbons. The biggest thing now is, so I live in a single parent home. So it's just mom and my little brother at home. But now all my show cattle who, you know, are 5, 6, 7 years old, we don't have to worry. Like if we need them up for a shot or if they need something done, we can just go walk out there because they're like giant dogs. So I would say we weren't good fair-wise in beef, but looking at it today, they're still making good calves. They're tame to where we can go out there. We don't need, you know, a big old tractor trailer, a horse to round them up, whatever that is. So that's a blessing. So our beef was not like our high point. I would say I think I tried cake decorating for like a year or two, and that did not last. I wish, because I would love to have that talent today, especially during quarantine, but that did not last long. I tried a lot of different things. I mean, there was like I forgot what the limit was, but I know there was a limit to how many projects each member could have, and I would try to reach that limit. Like my mom would get so frustrated with me because I wanted to fill anything I possibly could. So there's a lot of different stuff I tried, and then it just didn't like hold on. The main ones that held on was like arts and crafts, beef, photography was one of them. I would say those were my main ones that I kind of hung on to, and then I would try different things throughout the years. But yeah, so beef, we weren't great at it, but I loved it. And cake decorating, I tried it, and it just didn't last long.
Yeah, I was thinking you were pretty diversified 4-H'er, and the beef one really caught me off guard. And see, cake decorating and stuff like that, that's one of those talents I wish I had. And I'm not saying you can't. It's not a learned skill. It definitely is. But when I'm not good at something and I'm not truly passionate about it, my quit is like, nah, you know what? I'm good. I've tried this. I've invested, because I will invest a lot of time and money and effort into something just to try and get good at it. And then if I don't pick it up right off bat, I'm like, okay, you know, I gave it a try. But that was one of those things, like you go to like a bakery and you see all the stuff that, you know, decorating cakes or cupcakes and stuff like that. And I'm just like, that's a talent I wish that I had. But I still like to enjoy their products. So,
Yeah. Yep.
so you started at 11. So like right off the bat, were you going like teen conference and state events or state regional events, or did you stick to county for a few years and then grew into that, or how'd that work for you?
My first event was a year later in 2010, was 4-H camp up in Crowder State Park. And that was my first time ever leaving home that wasn't family. So that was a big deal for me. So that's why we waited a year. And mom was like, okay, let's give it a try. And I fell in love with camp life. That was my first 4-H event, and I absolutely loved camp. Crowder will always have a special place in my heart. So 2010 was my first 4-H event. I even went to there was a food event that I just remember getting chef hats and making food. I don't remember what it was in Columbia.
Ooh.
And so there was a couple different events that I went to as a younger 4-H'er. I remember going to conference maybe once or twice, but then when I hit that age of Congress was when everything was like, yes, like my main thing in 4-H wasn't even my projects anymore. It was going to these events and becoming this better leader that I could become. So it was really the events that kind of kept me pushing through 4-H and wanting to grow. So yeah, 4-H camp was my first one, and then it just kind of went from there. And I just started going to anything I could. Like, I loved being with people. I loved events. I loved just being able to learn and grow. Like that, those were my favorite things of 4-H. So again, I just annoyed mom with going to anything I possibly could. So yeah.
So what was your first camp experience? Like you said, you loved it, but I mean, did you have like homesickness? How'd you deal with that, if you had any? And then, you know, how long did it take you to warm up to everything? Or do you just warm up to everything right off the bat?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember exactly if I had homesickness, but I'm going to say I probably did, like, miss mom a little bit, because I still get that when I go on my big trips nowadays, as, you know, college student. Like, so I'm going to assume that I definitely missed my mom. But I remember just making new friends and being in a surrounding that wasn't my school. So again, my school was the same people, preschool through seniors, the same faces every day. So it was just so cool to be in an atmosphere of like new people, and people that had same passions and same interests as me. I remember at that camp, it was like, the t-shirt was hands holding an earth, and something about, taking care of the earth or whatever. And I remember planting flowers in a little like soup can, and we could paint the soup cans, and took that home, and I still have that plant today in a bigger pot. And I always remember camp because of that plant. And I just remember just loving the cabin dances and songs, being able to decorate your cabin, just all those fun activities that come into like camp life. I just fell in love with.
So what were some of your favorite sessions at camp?
Definitely leather. I loved leather. That kind of goes back to my crafty side and just being able to work with materials that I don't get to work with except at camp. Let me think. I remember one year they had, which they always try to have some type of conservation, but they had snakes, and we could hold snakes, like little bitty snakes. I enjoy that. I'm not going to go pick up a snake on the gravel road, but if someone hands it to me, I'll hold it. I mean, canoeing, all of those different, like, just things of learning. I remember one year it was about different cultures, and it was about all around the world. And we got to try different, like, snacks that different cultures would try, whether that was in England with, like, a cucumber sandwich, or, in a different culture. Like, I always loved when we talked about different cultures at different places in the world. Yeah, just about anything. I really loved it.
So I can't remember. I think it was my first camp as YPA. So 2017, it would have been the summer of 2017. I go down and I take a group down for canoes. And so we're talking about all this stuff, and I think it was April Min told me about the time that they had a snake in one of the canoes while the kids were out there.
Oh.
Now here's my thing. I am terrified of snakes. Like, that's probably one of my number one fears. And I thought to myself, I was like, I'd probably bail out of the canoe. Like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh no, as a staff person, I've got to make sure the kids are safe. I'm like, so I'm going to have to, like, try and fend off this snake when I really want to be running. I was like, that's going to be my, like, nightmare at camp.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now we make sure, because I guess it was like, because they do canoe checks, that we do canoe checks every morning. And so now we're like making sure because it was like curled up in the front underneath a metal part, and like it was kind of pinched in there. So like when it rolled over off it still didn't move any, but it finally moved out when all the kids were out in the water and moving. I think that's how it went, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I don't know what I would do if I was in that canoe.
I would have been gone though. If it's me. Now, if it's kids, I hope, that's what I hope. I hope in my head that I'm going through. Reality might be, kids or not, we're gone. So, so how many years of camp did you have? 2 or 3?
As a camper, let me think. Maybe just 2, but that feels really short. But I think age-wise, it would have just been 2.
Okay.
As a camper.
Anyway. Right. Now, and then did you go directly into counselor, or was there a year in between for you?
I went directly into counseling because I loved camp. And then I did counseling, and I was like, I love it. This is what I'm made for. I loved being a counselor. Even from as I got older, counseling was about like 5 years of my life or something. I would go to Congress, or I would go to more events. Camp was always the one I was most excited for, even though it was practically home. It was only 45 minutes away from my home. But I remember being so excited because I loved counseling. I loved the aspect of being with the kids 24/7, because those late night talks are just as important as those talks, at breakfast. So I loved being a counselor.
So what was your counselor selection process like your first time out?
Let me think about that. That's a while back. Well, we had to fill out an application. And by then, I was doing a lot of 4-H steps. So Sean Murphy knew me quite well. So I did the application, and then with the application, you get sent to, you get to choose a day to do, I don't know what they called it, workshop or something, to where all the people that sent an application would go hang out. Whether that was at Crowder Grounds, I think we went to Cameron before, and we would just play games. We would fill out more questions, like if something like this happened to a camper, what would you do? And really what it was we were all hanging out as kids, trying to be counselors, and adults, especially like Sean Murphy, would watch us, how we would interact with each other, how we interact with games, and how we'd answer those questions. That was always a lot of fun for me, because I'm like, I just get to hang out with friends and be me. But I remember that being the main process, and then they would send you a letter later on saying if you got accepted this year or not.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's evolved some since you were, the first time a counselor and stuff like that. So you're at camp as a counselor. You went from being a camper to now a counselor. What was that transition like?
A little hard, because even now I feel like I look like I'm 12. So as a counselor, my first year, I looked itty bitty, super young. So it was hard to kind of get that respect from my campers, because I was practically one of them. I was just so small, so young, so tiny. So that was hard. And that was very new and different for me, because that's kind of what I do all the time now. I work with kids and I'm being a leader, but that was my first, especially that first year of counseling, that was my first experience. So I was very nervous about that. There was hard moments. You'll always get those girls that, want to be more a little catty or more to themselves, whatever that is. But it was worth it. I do remember it being harder just because I didn't look my age, that's for sure. So.
Yeah, I think it's because I've asked a lot of the counselors the same question, because some of them have different experience in the transition. Did you have some of them that are like, oh hey, you're a camper again, and you're like, no, I am a counselor. So
Yep. Oh yeah, I still get that today at the 4-H camps I work at, or not the church camps I work at. Yeah, they definitely confuse me with a camper.
and then you're like, no, you don't understand. I'm staff.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's so. What was your favorite things to do as a counselor compared to a camper? Was everything pretty much the same, or was it just the kids kind of took over that top spot as opposed to learning projects and stuff like that?
I would say having that close-knit family of counselors, because as a camper, it was you and so many others. But as a counselor, it's you and a handful of others. So we really got to have that close-knit family of counselors, just working together and talking about cabins, hey, I'm having this problem. How'd you deal with this? So that was a big part of it. But really, it was just kind of being that cabin mom to all the campers. I really just loved being, that leader for the kids. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I've never really even thought about it that way, going from being a camper with all the kids to a tight knit group with the other counselors, because um, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. I had something else for you along those. Were you ever in cabin 3?
Probably cabin. So 1, 2, and 3 is all girls, and then 4 is girls, and 5, 6 is boys, right?
Right.
So I think I was in all of them at least once.
See, cabin 3, and I don't want to put this out there to scare kids, but it's the one that's always had issues, like showers getting too hot, or not really too hot, but like the steam setting off smoke alarms and accidents happening and stuff like that. Were you ever experienced any of that? Did you have that in cabin 3?
I don't remember having any like cabin issues. I mean, there was some kind of emergencies with campers or coons being right outside of our door, but I don't remember really anything with the building itself.
Oh, that's good. That was one of those. Someone was telling me stories, and they kept telling me the cabin. I was like, "What number are we talking about?" And they're like, "Oh, it's 3." I was like, I was starting to wondering if it was. I feel like there was originally cabin 13 a long time ago. There was 13 of them, and then they just cover up the 1, so the voodoo from 13 is still there, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know if you had that any experiences like that. It's
Nope.
So, what was it like the last time going to camp for you as a counselor? Because
Yeah.
okay, and I don't know if you remember this, because you and I had a conversation there. It was your last time, because I was asking you what you were going to do, and you had considered 4-H, right? Going on to be starting out at least as a YPA, or maybe even a specialist. I don't remember your career track at that time. And then it was between that and what you're currently doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I will warn you, this clock right here is about to ding like 11 times because it's almost 11 o'clock. So be ready for that. Yeah. So when I was a senior in high school, I remember not really being interested in college. I was like, I want to be done with school. So I only went to one college visit. I only applied to one college because I was just like over it. I wasn't really one of those kids who's like, when I was younger, I was like, yes, college, college, college. But when I got older, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And really my faith in God got a whole lot stronger, to where God was my number one. And that grew really fast in my high school years, to the point of like the people that watched my speech for state secretary, I talked about my faith and how that was over 4-H. But so it's pretty much like, God, where do you want me this coming year as a freshman in college? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? And yeah, so Sean Murphy is one of my biggest role models. He was there since day one when I started 4-H, and he's still there today. I'm kind of like one of his kids as well. And I admired what he did in his job. So yeah, I wanted to be a youth specialist for the longest time. And then I was like, well, I can start off, as like a YPA. I can go and I wanted to do 4-H. But then God just got a hold of my heart, because I had no idea what I wanted to major in when I got as a senior. I was like, I don't know. And God just got a hold of my heart, and I was just to a point where I was like, there it goes. I don't know if you can hear that.
That was actually perfect timing and where you were at in the conversation.
I swear. But yeah, so God was just like, I just want you to glorify me in every day of your life. So for me, that is being in the middle of ministry. And I totally believe that, like, my sister's a nurse, and as she's being a nurse, that's also her ministry. So I'm not saying, oh, to go spread Jesus, you have to be in a church. No. But for me, and my passion was in ministry. So I started majoring in religion and church leadership, and I wanted to be in youth ministry. And really the reason was because of 4-H. I found my love for people, and especially for the younger generation in 4-H. And my faith grew a lot in 4-H. The leaders that God put in my life had strong faith. So I actually grew closer to God because of 4-H. So it's not that 4-H is out of my life, that I'll never be in a employed position for 4-H, that I'll never, I definitely see myself helping 4-H, doing something for 4-H all my life, always. So that's not out of the picture yet, but I did end up majoring in church leadership and minoring in child development. So kind of youth ministry was the degree that I walked out on.
That's awesome. I remember we had that conversation, and it might not, it's been, when was your last year at camp? It was what, 17, 18? 18?
No, I think because I graduated in 16, and I don't know if I've been back since I started college. No, I definitely was there the summer of 17. Yeah,
So
17 was my.
your last camp was my first one.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
So, okay, and it's been that while, because I was trying to figure out, trying to remember our conversation that we had correctly, because I was pitching the 4-H side, and you might not have been as divided as I remember. I kind of feel like it was like maybe at that time like 60-40 or 50-50, and it could have been, my memory could be skewed because that's 3 years ago, as I'm trying to do 20 minus 17 in my head and struggling with that for some reason. But yeah, so I didn't. Have you thought about going down the path of Cody Green and Bart Scrow, who do both?
Yeah, I know. Cody's also, a close friend of mine. I haven't talked to him in a while. So Christina's Cody, hello. And hi, Bart. I miss you guys a lot. Yeah, like when I first met Cody, I really remember like, man, you're just like living my dream. Ministry and 4-H, what? Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Right now, I like in the next coming year. So I graduated in December and I'm done. Woo, I'm so happy that I'm done. So this coming summer I'm working at a church camp, a very large church camp that I could work at. Like I could work at it after the summer's over. But then at the same time my heart's really on the nations. So I've done some international mission work. So I would also love to travel to other countries and be there even for years if that's where God has me. So I've definitely thought about that same path of 4-H and ministry. And it's not that it's, a closed door. It's just maybe not in this season.
Mm-hmm. I see. I was thinking you had taken some international trips, and did you have one the summer after your first camp, or your last camp? I mean.
Yeah. So I actually had one that same summer.
Maybe. Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
So I went to Romania just for a week, working with orphans. That was awesome. That was so amazing. I went there, and the reason I was only there for a week, because it was a 2-week trip, but me and another couple had to come back a week short because we both had different things to do. That was Congress, and that was me running for state secretary. So that's why I only went to Romania for a week. So that summer was super full because I did Romania, Congress, and then 4-H camp. And a huge part of my speech, when I did my speech for state secretary, was about Romania and just how I watched me grow from this small 4-H'er to, because of 4-H and because of who 4-H has made me, I ended up in Romania. But then I also, that next summer, the reason I missed my retirement was because I was in Africa all the next summer of 18.
Okay, I think we were talking about that at 4-H camp, because I try to talk to like it's Sean or Kyle Hansen or some people from that area that know you, trying to keep up with you, and it seems like you're on big adventures, and it may not even be you leaving the United States. You do a lot of big things, I feel like, and that's one thing which makes your story so more interesting, as you talk about going from you had 12 kids in your class to now you're traveling internationally and doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I know you're still young. You said you were 22. So what has that experience been like when you look back at where you kind of started, even through 4-H and the small town upbringing and I don't know where you're at currently. Are you still local, or where are you at?
I'm not that far from Fayette, which is where Central Methodist University is at. I'm in like a small town, Franklin. I'm just out in the country right now. But yeah, so I'm sticking around close to Fayette because I still work and I'm doing things at that local church I work at.
So has that journey, because it seems like you've international trips, Congress, on the state 4-H council, all that stuff. Looking back, was that something that you envisioned, or what were your kind of your dreams that led it there, or did you just have this giant shift as soon as you got through 4-H and some of your high school years?
When I started 4-H, I had no idea it was going to put me where I'm at today. That's for sure. We did it because we had cows. Let's show cows. But I would say in high school, because there was a while that I was like, oh, I want to work with animals. I wanted to go work in a zoo or with National Geographic or something crazy. Like I wanted to be with animals. But there was a switch probably during that high school time where I was like, I want to be a youth specialist and I want to work with people. So that working with people stuck with me up until today. Now, yeah, it's changed on exactly, I'm not going to be a youth specialist tomorrow, but that switch happened because of 4-H, because I fell in love with people and recognized the importance of pouring into our younger generation, because they're the ones coming up behind me, and they're the ones carrying on the world, for when I'm gone, and so on and so on. So that's really where I found my love for people, was probably like young high school. And in high school, that's when I just really wanted to live for God. And I was always interested in international work, but I never had the opportunity until I got to college. And then everything was just putting into place. Like God was just like, Echo, like I have your life planned out. I've had it planned out. I knew 10 years ago that you'd be having this interview today, And it's been really cool to watch God work from the international trips. Because when I was in Africa, I got to work with kids all summer and pretty much do what I was doing in 4-H with kids. So that was really awesome. Even like camp songs and teaching them songs and dances and games. So that was really cool to watch that, because I remember being like standing in Uganda and being like, Lord, this is literally what I was doing with my 4-H kiddos. Like I was thinking about, it was, I think exactly the time, it was a week that I was standing with the kids and was like, man, I would be in Crowder right now. But that's okay, because you still have me here with these kids doing the same thing. So I had no idea that I was going to be able to travel or where anything was going to lead me. Like I said, I was not interested in college, and then I started college, and now I'm done, and here I am. But the coolest thing is I went to church, a big church camp last summer, and worked there all summer in Minnesota to be a counselor. So I got to do what I loved so much in 4-H again, plus Jesus being the center of it last summer. So yeah, I just watched like how all these pieces were put together to form my life how it is today.
Okay, so now I have many questions, but I want to get to one of them. What part of Minnesota were you in? Because Minnesota is amazing.
It's called Pine River, Minnesota. It was Trout Lake camps.
Okay. I've spent quite a bit of time around the Twin Cities and stuff like that, and then we went over to the Detroit Lakes area on the other side of the state. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and I loved it up there. So what was okay, so you've talked about your speech going to secretary. What was that whole process like as you're going through that? Was it nerve-wracking? Were you pretty confident? Where were you at that before you get up? Because we know, through our conversations that you got to that position, but and I know you worked hard for it, but were you like nerve-wracking going through everything? And what is that process? Is there more interviews? Is it election? How does that work?
Yeah, so, and I have to remember exactly how that went. So when you're on state council as a rep, then you're able to try for these upper offices. You can't just like jump onto the team for these upper offices. So as a big team with your, pres and down from last year, you as a team, any reps who want to apply for an office, and you can put what we'd rather want. Like we can put like, oh, I'd rather want president. But just because I stand up there in front of everybody doesn't mean the council will vote me on to try for president. So is that process of like, okay, these are our applications. Let's choose 2 that's going to apply for president, choose 2 for VP, and so on. So that's how we got like the 2 people trying. So then when we go to Congress for the kids, they're only voting between 2 people. Like who do they want for Secretary Echo or whoever. So it's not a bunch of people trying for the same office. And then when we have the 2 that's going for state secretary, we get to Congress, and we are having, we're doing marketing pretty much. We're having our posters up. There's rules about what we can and can't do, and we pretty much just spend time decorating and being like, hey, vote for Echo. And my saying was, donut, forget to vote for Echo as state secretary, because I kind of mixed in donuts and croissants into my speech, because then that's how I mixed in Romania, because we had croissants in Romania.
Well
it was
done.
super cheesy, but it was so perfect, because I just talked about like, there's so many different types of donuts, which it's my favorite food, by the way, but there's so many different forms and types of donuts, just as there's so many forms and different types of 4-H'ers and blah, blah, blah. And it was really cute and fun. So yeah, and the speech was, at that time, it was my biggest crowd that I ever spoke to. It was like 300-400 people, somewhere around there. So that was my biggest crowd. And of course I was nervous. I still get nervous today when I'm speaking in front of 20 people. But even before that speech, I found like my passion is speaking. I love speaking, teaching, preaching, whatever that is, to groups of people. So yeah, I was super scared. I was super nervous, but I loved going up there. I remember being in the back, and all of us, like all of the contestants or people who were running, we all stood in a circle and prayed, and that was really awesome. And just watching our officers go out there and do their thing and speak to these kids, I remember writing my speech and finishing it up on the plane back from Romania, and I think that was like a day or 2 before Congress. So it's pretty stressful. I'm pretty bad about waiting till the last minute. But it was fun. I had a great time, and I wanted to tell Missouri my heart, my truth, and that's what I did. So
That's awesome. So like, how did they tell you? Do they tell you beforehand it's announced on stage? Did they announce it on stage and everyone's surprised? How does that go?
yeah, so they announced on stage. It was me standing with the person I ran against, and then they announced it. And like the person who was with me, she still got to be in office. It was just not secretary. So she was one of the other 4 offices. So we're surprised. We hug and we go take our seat, as state secretary.
That's cool. That's really cool. So are you still close with those people that you're on the exec team with?
I would say some of them. Really, I haven't talked to many of them at all. There's more like reps, like as a whole, the reps and stuff that I was on a team with, I'll still connect with. The Hanson brothers I'm always in communication with them, it seems like. So there's a few, but I wouldn't say from that exec team. Life just keeps moving, and we're all doing college. But I try to keep up with where they're at in life, that's for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know how that worked, and I talked to Kyle, and Kyle's like, yeah, I talked to these people, and I feel like he talks to everyone though.
Yeah.
So I feel like his dailies, like there's like 30 people that he sends text messages to or calls or emails or something at least.
And it's harder because like he went to Mizzou, and that's where almost all 4-H, especially state council kids, go, and I didn't go to Mizzou. So I was kind of like that little bit of an outsider in that aspect.
It's okay to be different.
Thanks.
I mean, we still like you though. You may not be a Tiger all the way through, but you spent time in 4-H, so
Yep.
we'll take it.
Thanks.
So have you filled out the paperwork to become a volunteer for 4-H?
No. I was in the middle of it, like, what would that have been, my sophomore year, whenever I was officially not a member, my sophomore or junior year, I was filling it out and I just never got it done, and just life kept happening. I left for Africa, and took up a whole entire summer, and then I was gone again the whole last summer. So I still plan to, and I want to help, but now I don't even know where I'll be in August, if I'll even be in state come this August. So yeah, it's definitely in the back of my mind always, and I want to help when my life finally gets to where it's going to be for a while.
Right, where it's available, so you can sit down and be like, hey, I can dedicate this amount of time because I know where I'm going to be here for a bit. Yeah, that's always, can be a bit of a challenge, but I thought I'd toss it out there. I didn't know if maybe you while you're at school, if you'd done that, or you could always come back and volunteer at 4-H camp.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
That was my plan. After I did my last year of counseling, that was my plan, was to come back as a cabin mom, or I guess you had to be a certain age. So I was going to do something and then finally be a cabin mom, but it just never happened with how busy my life got with college.
Just do drop-ins like Kyle Hansen does and just show up and lead dances and stuff like that. He's like camp celebrity now. It's like royalty when he shows up.
I've been wanting to do that too, but then it just never works out with when I'm around.
Oh yeah,
I even wanted to drop in at a state council meeting, but then quarantine happened, so I was like, well, never mind.
Do it, and then just remind everyone, still not retired. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
That would be great. Like you could do that ending where you hang up the green jacket and all that stuff, or you could just hold on to that whole thing and be like, well, guess what? I never retired ever. So when you're like, a grandparent or mother, whichever, however that plays out, you can be like, I'm still there, still not giving it up.
Secretary. Yeah. Yeah.
So when they call you grandma and you're actually still grandma, and you'd be like, listen, I never retired, so I can still play that out. So that would be perfect. Oh man. So what would you say were your biggest takeaways from 4-H? Like life skills, or was it just the camaraderie, the people that made it all? What kind of really uh, was a big, like, I don't know what to say, defining moment or factor or anything like that, but is it just been the people that's been like the big takeaway from 4-H? Because you stuck with it all those years.
Yeah, I would say the people. I mean, and falling in love with working with people. That's why I wanted to be on state council, was to show people what you can accomplish in 4-H, but even more what you can accomplish in life. So definitely just working alongside people. Not only leading people, but being led, standing behind such amazing mentors and such amazing kids that were older than me, and just growing and watching them grow and become more of a person. I mean, I always make the best better. That's always in the back of my mind, and I always want to strive for that. In whatever I'm doing, is to make the best better. And as of who I am right now, as preaching the gospel, and there's never a day that I'm like, well, this isn't the best yet, and we can make the best better. So just 4-H as a whole has just made me who I am, and the leaders I had in my life, I would say the two biggest takeaways was the people, so being led and then leading, but then also my faith, because there's so many leaders in my life that I could sit down with and have such a strong conversation about faith. And I realized 4-H isn't like a Christian organization, but for me, in my heart, it was, and how God worked in that, it really was. And I was able to grow so much in not just who Echo is, but who I was created by, and what I can do in life, and how I can go out and just be the best child of God that I can be. And that's really because of 4-H. Like, it's just such an important part of my life. I will always, always cherish 4-H.
Yeah, it's been fun getting to know you for the little bit of time I had, and the interesting I've been around some interesting conversations that you've been a part of, or you've had with other people, or even with me, when we just talked about a little bit about the life plans and stuff like that, as I still recruit you to this day, obviously, on being a 4-H specialist, but whatever it may be, you'll be great at. I had another point there, and I just lost my whole train of thought. See, that's the fun part about like not taking notes on this stuff is like you just like on this roll and then you forget exactly what you were going to say and the point you
Yeah.
were going to make. But were you ever in FFA?
Yes. Yep. I
So
was
you
in pretty much anything I could be in because, again, small school, gotta fill up the time.
so you had Mr. Jones then?
Yes, I love Jonesy.
He is so great. I haven't seen him. He came and volunteered 2 years ago at one of our Caldwell County event. I called the Darren Farmer, the Mr. Farmer there is the instructor at polo, and I called him looking for a judge, and he was like, "I'll get you one," and I didn't know who it was going to be, and then walks Mr. Jones. I was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "You work for 4-H?" I said, "Yeah," and he was like, "That's surprising." So
How do
that
you
was
know him?
showing Herefords and stuff like that, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
my time at NCMC.
Awesome.
And we were around through FFA as well. Not so much. I didn't know him as well. I knew of him there, but through showing cattle and stuff like that's how I grew into to knowing him and stuff like that. And
Yeah, he was my ag teacher and my FFA advisor for however many years, and he just retired finally after my brother graduated. Yeah, I loved him. He was also an important like mentor and leader in my life, and I got to do a lot of fun things. I showed chickens in FFA with him, so I got into chickens because of Jones.
that's really I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
meat chickens. Yeah.
What? So okay. So walk me through that. So he just like, hey, you want to show chickens, or how did this conversation go about?
Well, it was actually it's like the MFA in Chillicothe, or I think it was in Chillicothe, was offering kind of like a deal, like, hey, come get 5 free baby chicks. Everyone after that is $1 or something. And I was like, and it was broilers, it was meat chickens. I was like, hey, mom, can I try this? And I set up like this rinky dink little pen with this crappy little chicken coop. But I was like, let's do it. And because we always had chickens, and I was always raised on home, homegrown meat, eggs, whatever that was. But we never had meat chickens of my own. And I was like, let's do it. And I did it. Turns out my mom and I aren't that bad. So my brother, as one of his projects in Jones's class, was making a chicken coop. So we had this really cute red barn looking chicken coop. And I did that for, the however many more years I had of high school. And I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot, and I did pretty good at chickens, and I just loved dealing with that. And that was when Mr. Coates, I think, what was Bramer, ag
Yeah.
teacher, he would show, and I got really close to him too. So that was also a fun experience. And I wouldn't have shown chickens if I never showed cattle. I wouldn't have been in that even realm of, oh, let's show livestock. But
Right.
yeah, that
That's
was fun.
interesting. That's really interesting and cool story. I didn't. Yeah, you were just like, oh yeah, and show chickens. I was like, whoa, you just gonna slide that in there? And that.
Yeah.
So quick story. So our school bus was Union Star. We took to like a FFA contest, so we go over and we do Trenton's, and like the people on the bus are like, Steiner, I dare you to go sit on Tina's bus and just sit there and not say anything. So I'm probably, I will say junior, so it's in between sophomore and senior year, somewhere around there. And I was like, sure, why not? Of course, I know Mr. Jones. The people in Union Star don't know I know Mr. Jones, and they also know the tiny kids don't know that connection. So I go sit like first seat on the bus. Like these kids are freaking out, like what is going on? Not saying anything, not doing anything. And then for like, I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, and then they were like, what is going on? And then they just strike up this random conversation, like, what are you doing? And I didn't say anything. I just sat there. I was like, nope, nope. And so, I finally said like a couple of words, and then Mr. Jones gets on here. He's like, Steiner, get out of here. And so
Yeah.
they're like, and he was like explaining, who I was and how he knew me. Cause he was like, just this random idea that popped in my head. And so, yeah, I made like $5 or something off the deal because they didn't think I would do it.
worth it, man.
Oh, totally worth it. You know, and it helps that when you know all those people to go do stuff like that, and you're like, okay, I know it's safe and that it'll be safe for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, but uh, so how have you found or handled the challenging times that we're in right now with the being in quarantine and well, I guess we're coming out of quarantine now, hopefully. Uh, how have you found that with your one, your life, and two, your career?
Yeah, it's been very hard, especially to begin with because I'm almost done with school. You know, I graduated in December, so thank goodness I was done because I do not do online that well at all. Um, and I was working at the church in Fayette. I was having these office hours. I had my schedule of the days I went in, that I worked, and then I worked at a coffee and creamery. So I was being a barista and that life and everything, and I had the hours for that. So I had, you know, this nice layout of jobs and okay income for once. Like, you know, as a college kid, it's so hard to find time to have like a good income. And I actually was like living life. I was, you know, pretty much full time with all that, with both the jobs going on. And it was great because I was still doing ministry. I was still being able to be part of CMU's life and to pour into freshmen, but then also be part of my youth group and pour into my girls. And I really enjoyed where I was at. And then the idea popped up as like, you know, CMU might have to close down and all your friends might have to leave. I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. And it happened. And I was so upset. And I was watching friends leave that were just, you know, growing so close to God, and you hate watching them go because it's like, no, you still have so much to grow, and home life isn't the greatest, and you want them to stay. So it was so hard watching friends leave because anyone that knows me knows I love people and I want to be around people and I want to fill my time with others. So it was awful to know that everyone was leaving. So that happened, and then it got even worse because then I had to move. I was living with this elderly lady, Linda. She's like my best friend. I love her so much. But, you know, she has asthma. She's elderly. It just wasn't safe because she was going to quarantine herself in the house. I was still out and about working at that time. So then I moved here, and just so much change. And I don't do well with change. I know that's life, but I just don't do well with life and with change. And so it was really, really hard to just like have so many different things happen. But through the quietness and through kind of like life slowing down, I've been able to step back and kind of like recenter it, which it was always centered around God to begin with, but kind of like, where does Echo want to be at? You know, like, where do I want to be at this coming August? Like, life starts and I'm an adult now. You know, like, you think you're an adult when you turn 18, or you think you're an adult when you're in college, but you're just not until you're done with classes and you're out there and you don't know what to do. So it was very hard, but it's definitely gotten easier. There went the clock. And just being able to kind of take a step back and kind of focus on where I'm at today, you know, and what is tomorrow going to bring. That's been my focus, and just really loving people. There's still a handful of friends that still, you know, stuck around in Fayette or Boonville, and just loving them the best I can. Loving my kids, so we still have youth group over Zoom though, so loving them the best I can over the screen, and just trying to be, you know, that good person that God asks of us. So I've been trying to do good things with my time. Have I failed? Yeah. Have I watched too much YouTube? Yes. Or have I, you know, been on TikTok too much? Yes. But other than that, like, I've definitely grown in just being able to be in silence and to not put my everything in people, but to kind of refocus it just all on God and go from there.
That's awesome. So have you used your 4-H and your natural creative abilities to find ways to still do all your practices and get creative with your internet, you know, Zoom world that you have been living in with your career?
Yeah, like, we've been able to still do fun activities with our kids. We did a spirit week, but through online. So they would send us pictures of whatever that, you know, Tropical Tuesday. They would send us pictures through that. So it was very important to me to keep things very active, even though it's through screen, you know. So we will do Bible plans through the phones. We will still have, you know, active days to where we dressed up, or we, you know, send in pictures of us dressed like our favorite leader, whatever that looks like. So in that way we've gotten creative of just like still reaching out to the kids. And me personally, I've been doing more crafts, like going back to my craft things, you know, and just kind of opening up that part of my heart again and seeing that. And actually, on top of just passions, you know, showing cattle, the people I live with have a herd of sheep and some goats, and I'm bottle feeding 2 kids right now, which is great because I love animals, and it goes back to, you know, what I did many years ago. And so I'm loving that. I absolutely love taking care of them. So yeah, it's just kind of like going back to those passions that I found 10 years ago. So that's been really cool.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you found yourself in the right places, the right situations, regardless of the challenge. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I am all out of questions. So if you have anything you want to say, shout out anyone, advice you want to give the 4-Hers, or if you have questions for me or anything else you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Wow. I mean, I can't do just one show. I've already talked about Sean probably enough, but like everyone that worked at Crowder State Park, you know, those years of camp really had a huge impact on my life. And then of course, you know, Brad Anderson and all the people on state council, and all the leaders on state council, and Mama Joyce for sure, which I still get to see Mama Joyce because she lives in Fayette. So of course all those people, but then I can't name all the names that have had an impact on me. So thank you to everybody who's just been in my life. Even if you're one of my campers, like you guys have still had an impact on my life. And my biggest takeaway, especially in my, like where I'm at in my life, is when you hit that college, you know, when you go from being a 4-H'er in high school and going into college, like just don't waste your summers. You know, your college summers are the most important thing. It's kind of this time in between, like you're an adult and you can kind of do you, but then also don't just sit at home. Like use those summers. Just like I got to travel, and you don't have to, that doesn't mean you have to go travel, but use those for your passions. You know, if that's going back and volunteering all summer for 4-H, do that. So definitely just be aware of that. For the kids that are younger, I would just encourage to try new projects, to find your passion in what you love to do, and then teach others about that. You know, don't just stop at, I love doing this, but go a step further and teach others how to do that, and let them find their passion as well. Yeah, just a huge thank you to 4-H. Like 4-H has really impacted me in the person I am today. Like I am who I am today because of 4-H, because of every single moment from my first 4-H camp to my last, you know, 4-H event. It's just had an amazing impact on me. So thank you, Stephen, for letting me be on here and talk about it. It really means a lot just being able to kind of like bring up those memories and cherish those memories all over again. So thanks.
Oh, no problem. And one, you're a great guest. Two, it's been you know, fun getting to know you and seeing all the things you do and catching up with, because I haven't been able to keep up with you. Usually I talk to Kyle Hansen and do all that stuff, but that's why I started this podcast. I had this thing when I started the job. I had the idea, and I shot Brad Anderson. He said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." And I was trying to find my way in my job, and then when the quarantine hit, they were like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Let's tell 4-H stories. Let's talk to current 4-Hers. Let's talk to 4-H alumni. Let's talk to 4-H staff. Let's just tell stories in a different way." And so that's what I like, enjoy hearing your story, where you're at, you know, where 4-H is taking you, and, you know, kind of some plans about what the future is. I think we all have a, you know, kind of a rough outline, but we're all guided by different things. So,
Yeah.
and I'm so glad we could work a time out and you were able to get on here and share your story. So I appreciate it
Yeah.
very much.
I do want to say that if anybody wants to message me and ask questions, like, my messages are always open. So, like, if you're watching this and if you're one of my old campers or whoever, message me. Let's talk about 4-H. And also, to a very select few, don't forget the triangle. You know who you are. But I had to put that in there.
Oh Lord. Have you thought about this? Some of the campers that you had are now counselors. I know there's always that last few
Yeah.
age years, but I mean, even some of the younger campers are now moving up into that counselor.
Yeah. I was thinking about that with the regional reps. Our regional reps this year were my campers. And guys, I'm so proud of Northwest reps. Go, you guys. I'm so happy to see that team. Like, you four, I know you're doing great things. I just hope and pray that you do, increase and make the best better in 4-H. So that's been really cool to watch my campers, these kids that I admired as campers now be regional representatives. Like, that's been really, really cool.
Absolutely. Northwest is the best, so I had to put
Yeah,
that out
it
there.
is.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'll have this posted sometime soon, probably today or tomorrow, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, really.